All right. So, all right, Mike. So I'm going to call this meeting to order at 3:35. And commissioners, when I call your names, please answer in the affirmative. Edwin Claflin.
Aye.
Michelle Kramer.
Aye.
John Meitinen.
Aye.
Joseph Topham.
Aye.
RJ Turcott.
Aye.
And Ian Golding present. At the moment, the only person who isn't present is Laura Walters.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, Laura, wonderful. Good afternoon, and I apologize. So,
I think I couldn't get on
here
my
we are.
computer. So I
So,
did my phone.
and we've established quorum, and we approval of minutes. I assume that we all approve the minutes, and approval of. I beg your pardon. Approval of the agenda. That we all approve the agenda, and for approval of minutes, I actually have a slight point to make, Mike, because on 2D, where I'm quoted as saying that I would provide locations of minor intersections where signs should be removed. I thought I said that I would provide photographs to go with Patrick Reed's spreadsheet, because it's not up to me to provide the locations of the minor intersections in a sense. And that's why I've provided now the photographs in fact, for Patrick's complete spreadsheet, so that it can be discussed as a group, and that the group decides what they consider to be minor intersections or private roads or dirt roads, where they would advise traffic safety and the select board where signs should be removed. So, but otherwise, a motion to approve the minutes, please.
Ian, I'm actually going to abstain from this one. I wasn't actually at the August 21st meeting.
Thanks, RJ. Do
I
I
can
hear
make that motion.
Thanks, Edwin. So by roll call vote, Edwin Claflin.
Aye.
Michelle Kramer.
I wasn't there either the last time, so I guess I should abstain as well.
Okay. John Meitinen.
Aye.
Joe Topham.
Aye.
And Laura, were you there? You're muted, Laura.
Sorry, yes, I believe I was.
Okay.
So I.
Excellent. Thank you. With two, so that's 5 approvals with 2 abstentions. And then Mike and Michelle, is there any comments to be made on items that are not included on today's agenda?
So, Mike, was there something specific you would like me to talk about, or?
I think I
And
have
Mike
this under
was the one that, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
under 3A, Mr. Chair. I think that's where we intended to cover this under committee comments, just to share that information. Is that all right?
Sure, absolutely. So that brings us on to action and discussion items, and that's before I get there. That's assuming that Michelle doesn't have to leave by 4:30. So Michelle, if you want to take that into account, or with
I mean, I guess if it happens that it's already 4:30 and we're not at 3A yet, I mean, I think Mike could talk about certain things as well. Otherwise, I could maybe send information afterwards to the group as well, if that's allowed.
sure.
Yeah, I'm happy to take over from Michelle and just share that 2 or 3 things that we had worked on. I just thought it was a good opportunity to have them participate, but we'll watch the clock and make that decision.
Great. Okay, so that brings us on to action and discussing items, status of path stop sign removal. And I'm going to lead off on this because I've been involved since its inception 6 years ago. And in fact, Jason Bridges was chair, and I then brought it before the FinCom, and two of the members were very well. They approved it, but David Worth, who was chair at the time, said he just felt he was taking his life into his hands every time he went on the Palpus Road because of all the stop signs that he didn't think was necessary. And it was passed in 2021, and here we are in 2024. And I understand that unfortunately, it's been misrepresented from my perspective as though it was, a movement to remove all stop signs from the bike paths, rather than deal with what I think I would like to see a common consensus on what we all think are nuisance stop signs. And I would be happy for us to go through the 4 spreadsheets that we have. If you've all looked at them, I have mine printed out so that we could come to some uniform decision. If you feel that you'd like to do that between now and the next meeting, I'd be happy to have you send to me and Mike the signs that you felt should be removed. And from my perspective, just to use 3 examples, on the Palpus Road, I mean, signs that seem to me obviously should be removed. There's Isabel's Way right at the beginning, which is a tiny little road, and there's 2 or 3 houses. And then, of course, Bonnet Valley is a dirt road where there was that sad fatality of Stuart Finkelstein was hit. And then a classic example is the windswept bog, where, but rather than go on, I don't know what the sense of the meeting would be. And also, would any fellow committee members like to weigh in on this?
Can I start, maybe?
Please.
I was also under the impression that we actually would get rid of all these stop signs because the regulations changed on Nantucket that bikes and I guess pedestrians on a multi-use path always have the right of way to cars in a crossing, or at least if they're intersecting with a driveway or another road. If that's indeed the case, then I don't really understand why there is a discussion that we would need to keep the stop signs on the bike path.
So I don't know if Chief Casper, if you'd like to address that, if you're on the call, or Mike, I can certainly read from several. So from when it comes to actual traffic rules and regulations in the town of Nantucket, chapter 200. So on section 221.19, driving on sidewalks or bike paths, it says quite clearly that you should not drive on or over a sidewalk or bike path except at a permanent or temporary driveway or at any intersection of streets. The driver of the vehicle prior to driving on or over any such driveway shall yield the right of way to any pedestrian or bicycle approaching within 5 feet of such driveway. And then also we have exactly the same thing from emerging from a private road or driveway. I don't know what the legal opinion would be about where a multi-use path comes to a main road. And so it's sort of, you're bringing up an interesting point, Michelle, from my perspective. The answer, I don't have an answer. So when we brought it up for town meeting, it was to deal with what we considered the signs that really were not appropriate, as opposed to signs that we felt were appropriate. In other words, I feel personally for Tom Nevers or is an example where there's enough traffic coming through that it would seem sensible to have a stop sign there for both the multi-use path as well as the cars coming down the Tom Nevers Road. So, Chief Casper, would you like to weigh in at this point, or have we got to the point where we need a legal opinion? Because Michelle, I mean, you brought up a really interesting point. So, good afternoon, Chief Casper.
Good afternoon. Yeah, Mike Burns, Mike, I think you have, because Mike and I have talked about this and pointed out the disparity or difference between the state and local. Do you have that in front of you, Mike, to talk about that?
Yeah, is it appropriate, Mr. Chair, to run through a slide deck that I prepared that kind of summarizes what BPAC had previously recommended, which I think Michelle had brought up a point of what the local bylaw is, and then based on the recommendation of this committee, based on a recommendation of NPDC, I've shared that with a traffic safety group, and there's a conflicting recommendation that come out of that group. Is it all right to just run through that slide deck? I think it's going to explain a lot of this, if that's all right, and just to frame the issue that why we're having this on the agenda right now.
But Mike, there's a fundamental disconnect when you say that, because I've been on this committee since its inception. There has never been a vote taken on this committee about nuisance signs. It got as far as Patrick Reed putting together a spreadsheet, and that's as far as it got. So nobody ever talked about it. And then you came back on, in your role, and here we are. So to me, it's based on a false premise that BPAC ever made any recommendations for what signs should be removed.
I did bring this to the PDC and discuss.
Sorry?
Mr. Chair, I did bring this to the NPDC based on a request from BPAC. So it absolutely was discussed since I've returned at this committee. And it's based on those recommendations that I shared it with NPDC and then shared it with the Traffic Safety Committee to actually get approval to do those things. So we have discussed it. I would really ask if you don't want to watch the slide deck and have that shared with the rest of the committee members, I'm happy to not share the presentation. But I really think that would explain a lot and get to the crux of the conflict here. And we do have a conflict here.
But Mike, BPAC never made a recommendation, period. So when you say that you've gone before the planning board with BPAC's recommendation, or the BPAC went to the planning board with a recommendation, they didn't. And of course, I'm not trying to stop you from showing a slideshow. I'm just saying that is not the way that it's taken place.
Okay. I may be misremembering, and if I did, I absolutely apologize. But I do believe that I was asked by this committee in the last year and a half to bring these recommendations and the spreadsheet, specifically the spreadsheet of recommendations, to the NPDC and actually have that. So if I'm misremembering that, I apologize. But if I believe that's what was done. But I think it's kind of moot, actually. The fact of the matter is there is a bylaw that gives protections to bicyclists at crosswalks at major intersections. We did submit the BPAC spreadsheet, or Patrick Reed or whoever had a list of recommended signs that to be removed along Matticat Road and Pulpus Road. I shared that with our traffic safety staff. We reviewed that and then had some conflict and not a lot of support from traffic safety staff. So I can present an explanation of why there's a conflict and why there's some pushback on doing this. And that's based on state law and design standard and the design guide for Mass DOT. I can share a recommendation from traffic safety to help square this and actually improve signage and pavement markings at those locations, but it's a little bit different than what BPAC is suggesting be done. So
All right, well, I'm going to add the caveat, without driving the subject in the ground, that BPAC has not suggested anything yet.
Okay.
And that that spreadsheet from Patrick Reed was, the basis on which signs that BPAC should recommend to be removed. And having said that, apparently we agree to disagree. And please show us your, your PowerPoint presentation, and hopefully it'll be a help for all of us.
all right. So here's a slide deck that I shared with the traffic safety group, and there was support for this. The right of way at crosswalks, state law and the local bylaw. The first bullet point is from Mass General Law, and it notes that pedestrians to yield to pedestrians within the crosswalk, and that there are protections for pedestrians. The second bullet point is the local bylaw, and it's any person operating a motor vehicle shall stop or yield to a bicyclist, pedestrian, or other user. So it does expand the protections beyond pedestrians. But again, there was a conflict with the state law. The Massachusetts Department of Transportation's design guide for paths crossing roads. There's an image on the left-hand side. The path is actually going from left to right. The roadway from top to bottom or bottom to top. And notes that in most cases, stop signs are to be provided on a path that approaches. A stop ahead sign is to be sited along the path, and then stop bars and center lines are to be provided along the path and approaches to those crossings. So that's the Mass DOT design standard that if we are to take state or federal funding, that's the design that's to be used when spending the public money. The design standard for that BPAC had or what was recommended for the local bylaw, not sure about the support or not from BPAC, is to actually remove the stop sign and remove the stop bar from the paths crossing of a roadway, and actually add signage of a shared youth path crossing to the roadway approaches to the path. So that was the design standard that was kind of used in Patrick Reed's example. So an example location on the Matticat Road at South Cambridge Street. Excuse me if this says BPAC recommendation, but this is the spreadsheet that we got from the Patrick Reed. But anyway, the recommendation was to remove this stop sign that's facing the image, and to add a yield sign for Matticat Road traffic entering South Cambridge Street. So the staff recommendation, after consultation with traffic safety staff, police, fire, DPW, and myself, we all agreed that the path stop signs should remain at this location, actually, to alert all users, whether they're driving or or walking or riding a bicycle, to use an abundance of caution crossing. And we also suggest that parallel, since this is in the country location, a marked crosswalk, and in this location, parallel bars serving as a crosswalk to better delineate the path for both directions of vehicle flow. Moving on to the next intersection on Matticat Road. This is at the dump driveway, where there's a stop sign for all approaches, vehicles crossing the path and path users. So the recommendation based on the local bylaws to remove the path stop signs at this crossing. The traffic safety staff recommendation is to keep the path stop signs and to alert all users. And again, this is to exercise an abundance of caution at this particular crossing. For the Pulpus Road locations, some of which, Mr. Chair, you had mentioned earlier, there are actually no stop signs before the path on the exiting roadway. entering Pulpus Road. So the recommendation would be to actually install a stop sign for those approaches to the path and to install a crosswalk at those locations. I believe based on the local bylaw, the path stop signs would just be removed, but I think we still need those stop signs for the approaching roads on like Kelly, Alter Rock, and Almanac Pond Road. So these are all about the same. None of these locations have a marked crossing of the path across these ancillary roadways. So the recommendation would be to add those, and where there are not stop signs for the vehicle approaches from the roadways crossing the path, to add those stop signs and to actually keep those stop signs along the path at those locations. So the suggestion as far as the marked crossings, the image on the bottom left is what we call a continental crossing. Those are more appropriate in the town areas, more heavily settled areas. And then what we're suggesting for more rural aesthetic areas is the parallel bars to serve as the crossing, and again to provide the most the safest condition for all users of the intersection. So, Mr. Chair, just running through that, you can see that there are different design recommendations here. Traffic safety has made their recommendation to the town manager on this issue. I think it'd be good to share the recommendation, the spreadsheets that you had provided, share those as well, and that we bring this to the select board to kind of settle the matter and provide some direction to staff and residents and visitors of the island of the rules of the road on the paths that we all agree on. So thanks for letting me run through those really quick, but you can see how there's a little bit of a conflict in just how the crossings are treated.
Yes, and would you go back, if I may, before I entertain questions, would you go back to the slide of Alter Rock and Almanac Pond Road? And thank you. So from my perspective, the stop signs on the bike path for Alter Rock and for Almanac, well, for Alter Rock at a minimum, should be removed. The idea that your bicyclist is actually breaking the law when, you know, going across a dirt road that is, I don't know, maybe has, you know, 3-5 cars an hour coming through, for me, doesn't make any sense. And so part of my concern is obviously that when you see a bicyclist go through a stop sign as a motorist, you know, it sort of adds to the psychological annoyance, perhaps is a good word, because everybody seems to have, you know, horror bicyclist stories, while nobody seems to have a motorist horror story per se. So I would not, so I would hope that, bearing this in mind, that we could, before going to the select board, that we actually look at these spreadsheets and have a discussion of where we feel that there are minor stop signs that should be removed on the bike path. If the committee feels that they would like to go ahead with Mike's presentation to the select board, and then we'll put it to a vote and take it from there, because I think that's fair. But I feel I hope you don't feel that I've monopolized this meeting to the extent that I have on this subject. So thank you, Mike. Would you get us back to the full-size screen? And then are there any commission members who would like to speak?
Can I follow up on my question? Sorry, I feel a little bit like I set off a heated debate. I actually came with the question as well because I had seen the slideshow beforehand, and I saw that there is that conflict between the state and Nantucket, when it comes to the regulations. My personal point of view is that I think a lot of accidents happen when things get confusing. And to me, when you have stop signs everywhere, that becomes confusing to me. So I would think that if there's a clear, for Nantucket at least, situation where the bicyclists and pedestrians have the right of way on a multi-use path, there should only be a stop sign on the road that crosses that multi-use path, if that's at least clear by law. Now then, like, I'm not a lawyer, or I'm not sure like how much this bylaw overrules the state law, or like is how that regulation works from like bylaw Nantucket versus state law. But if the bylaw overrules the state law, then bicyclists have the right of way, and I don't think there should be a stop sign. I think additionally, we could maybe also improve certain the way these crossings are designed by having the raised crossings, the raised multi-use path crossings, and so on, also according to MassDOT standards. So it's more like, a long story short, more out of that. I think it's a clear situation that the bicyclists have the right of way, than that it's, I don't know. I guess I didn't make the story shorter, but that's kind of what I wanted to say.
Well, thank you, Michelle. And so I think the bottom line is that the Article 76 was drafted with the help of Koppelman and Page. It was voted on at town meeting and approved, and then went to the Attorney General, and the Attorney General approved it. And so it is a case, I believe, of where local law has been, which I think is the nature of the Commonwealth, is that if a local law is approved by the Attorney General, then it takes precedence over a state law. But I'm not a lawyer either, but that is my understanding of why we are here. So, yes, Edwin. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I have 2 points. I'll try to be brief. I live at 131 Pulpus, which is featured in one of the slides, in between 129 and 135, as a private driveway. And we've got, I think one of the owners of the property adjacent to mine put up a warning sign or something for crossing it, but there's nothing official on the driveway. There's stuff on the bike path, which was, I don't know who put up, but so it's my understanding that basically the concern is that many bikers are not following any of the stop signs, as they have the right of the way on bike paths. But when a path ends and comes to a junction of another road, the stop sign there is an accurate stop sign in the fact that it is not a crossing. You are entering a new road and then going onto a different path. So like at the end of Matticat Road, bike path, at the end of Sconset, bike path, at the end of the Pulpus bike path, we don't want people coming to the end of those and just blasting through, even though they do technically have the right of way to make the crossing at a place like Milestone Road, and those should be followed. So that maybe needs to be a distinction. And then if the same logic were to apply to driveways and people leaving their houses in a vehicle, nobody's private driveway has a stop sign at the end of it when they're leaving their own house. So does that driver never stop before entering a roadway? No, they stop before entering a roadway and then make that crossing. So logically, it makes sense that on a bike path, everyone should be stopping for the pedestrians and bikers going across it because they have the legal right of way, except when it comes to a major intersection or a crossing, essentially. But private driveways should follow the same rules, that if you're driving out of your driveway, you should not just drive into a road or cross a path without coming to a complete stop prior to entering those ways. That's my general understanding.
Right, and that's the law.
Right.
Right. Almanac Pond Road is an example of where there is not a stop sign for the at the end of Almanac Pond Road. And so I had an altercation there, which I think I brought up, where, long story short, the young couple in the vehicle behind the vehicle that had nearly hit me had come in the previous evening and were unaware that there was a bike path there. And so so they would have driven right across it, which seems to me an excellent argument to make sure that there are stop signs on these dirt roads and on these private roads. And I think, Mike, also in your slide, you're showing that basically that you feel that, you know, would make it a safer situation. Thank you. So I've said enough. And Edwin, do you want to follow up? Or I see RJ and Laura's hands up.
I don't need to say anything else at this time. I can circle back later.
Thank you. RJ?
Thank you, Ian. I agree with what Edwin has said so far, and in general, most of the comments. One of my just quick clarifying questions to Mike is how many of these bike paths with intersections in question have we either taken or plan to take state or federal funding from? And on top of that, are those what you showed in the slideshow, like the minimum of what the state requires if you use their funding? And can we add things to those intersections? Or does it have to be exactly how you just showed it on the slide? Or is that just a general example? Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the standard that I shared is from the MUTCD, the Manual Uniform Traffic Control Devices, and it's what the DOT uses and the guidance they give to the communities for, and that's the center line, the stop bar, and then the mini stop sign. So to not use that on state-funded projects, I think would require a design exemption be submitted, and then just basically provide some justification for not providing that kind of control at a crossing. As far as other paths, we're currently about to break ground on the extension of the Milestone Road bike path on the north side of the roadway, connect the Monomoy to the Pulpus bike path. That design does have stop bars and center lines on that path. Other projects, that Walnut path is under design right now. That's being overseen by Federal Highway. So it's a federal design team that's overseeing that project. The other bike path that I think is in design right now is the Tom Nevers bike path, which is locally funded. And I don't believe we've got the specifications on the crossings there just yet. We're mostly just fiddling with the alignment of the path and how it impacts abutting property owners. So that's the effort that's going in right now is figuring out what the alignment of that path is going to be. And I can't think of anything on the near term that we would seek funding for as far as federal, state funded other paths. But I hope that addresses the question. Yeah.
Thank you, Mike. RJ's?
That covered it. Thank
Great. So Laura, thank you for your patience.
Yep, I just had I think we're all in agreement that with bikes having right of way, even when there are stop signs, I don't really see everyone stopping. And it is on the cars to make sure that they're aware of bikers. And a lot of times, I forget who mentioned it, maybe it was Ian, that sometimes people aren't even aware that they're crossing a bike path. And there are bike paths. We all live here. I've watched my neighbor who's lived here forever almost take someone out crossing a bike path. So it's not always on top of mind that there's the bike path there. So I like that, the parallel lines. And I'm wondering if there's an issue with that aesthetically being out in a, rural area. And I know in other places, the paths aren't always two white lines. Like sometimes you see a green pathway or they're colored different things. Is there anything in the laws about making it maybe something prettier, but something that would be everyone would know, oh, I see this color, I know that's the bike path. Alert, stop, look for bike. So is there anything along legal, like rules with that? Do you know?
Mike?
Well, the green pavement markings is pretty universal and kind of an accepted treatment under the design. I think that's actually an MUTCD that's used nationally. That green can be used as kind of a universal color for bicycle paths or lanes. It's actually red in Europe, I think, but we use red for emergency vehicles here. So it's not global. It's more of a national standard. So
It's more of an orange red in the
yeah.
Netherlands.
So I hope that answers the question. As far as the parallel bars, I think that's more of a maintenance and the quantity of paint that would be needed to mark those. So that was a consideration. The minimalist style that's we hear from the historic stakeholders, they like a minimalist approach in the country areas. So that's why the parallel bars were used rather than the piano key treatments, which is a heavier, even though it's more visual. We're suggesting that the parallel bars be used in some of these out of town areas.
Thank you, Mike. Any further questions or comments?
Well, actually, to come back with maybe in a European example, that could be something in between. We use blocks as kind of like instead of the parallel bars, we have like square blocks on each side as a bike path crossing. If that would make it more clear, I don't know.
Well, I mean, different states, Colorado, for instance, they have, in fact, I could show it to you. I think we've had it up before, haven't we, Mike, back in the past?
Sure.
What I have to do here. Whoops, sorry. But I have to adjust background, none. So, okay, it goes into my own camera. So this is an example of what they have in Colorado, where it says stop and trail crossing, and then on their driveway crossing. So to warn both, in other words, warn the bicyclists that there's a driveway there, and to tell of course, we're talking rural Colorado, and I'm not trying to make the comparison in terms of distances. That's a 35-mile long former rail track that is crossed regularly by ranch driveways and that sort of thing. But that's an example of another state there. And I know Joe Topham has an example from Falmouth, actually. But so I guess, from my perspective, does my fellow commissioners have an appetite for looking at the spreadsheet with accompanying photographs? I beg your pardon. Edwin, please go ahead.
No, I was just going to carry on the conversation. I think in the same direction. Doesn't the town already have guidelines? And I'm thinking essentially to like the snow plow routes. Like if it is a maintained road that is required to be maintained, that is a major enough road that would institute a stop sign of a path crossing it. Otherwise, it is considered a way, or I don't know the terminology, but would then not have right of way over a major intersection. Is there not any sort of already guideline in the state, in the local bylaws?
The answer for me is I don't know. I'm embarrassed to say.
I mean, we have certain routes which are defined and receive funding based off of that, and then others have to be privately maintained as a private road. And if it's a private road, it has no jurisdiction to have any stop signage over it. And if it does have a regulation from the town that says a fire truck has to be able to maintain and access this route, it has to be maintained, therefore it is a major route, and therefore a stop sign should be followed by individuals on a path.
The answer is that, from my understanding, that the article approved by the Attorney General's office is giving discretion to the town of where they decide that stop signs should be removed from the multi-use path. And, but again, without town council weighing in on this, I'm sure I could mislead as well as anybody else on the subject, you know, so. And Mike, I don't know if you have anything to add or?
The local bylaw just said at major intersections, and we really don't have anything that kind of Edwin, it seems like you're saying there is a difference between public and private roadways, which there absolutely is. We have maps of public roadways and they all have to be maintained by the snowplows. So private roadways aren't. They handle it their own way.
But
So.
larger areas, which, like, say, I don't want to bring them up, but like Sankaty Head Golf Club, that is a private driveway, but it's a private large institution that therefore I think they have a required fire extinguisher near them or something like that. There are certain maintenance standards which I think are defined by basically use. And so like a private driveway, if there are certain numbers of houses, then have to then qualify to become a public way, which then changes the use of it once you have a certain number of people on it or something. I think there's standards.
Well, there's certainly standards for private driveways. In other words, they certainly before the Conservation Commission, when we had a number of very long private driveways, they all had to be over 8 feet wide so that fire trucks and ambulances could come down them. It didn't change their status, and it was just I think that's a land use requirement, or you know, a town bylaw requirement. But again, I can't cite you chapter and verse. But
Mr. Chairman, if it's all right, I'll just say that Edwin, you're raising a question that's kind of at the reason why Chief Casper and other public safety staff just had questions about this, because the way the local bylaw reads is that with the exception of major intersections to be determined by the town. And the feedback I got from public safety staff is that every intersection is a major intersection, and even some driveways to, say, the golf course, to the dump, to some popular land bank sites, those are considered to be major crossings. So I think that's why why not exercise an abundance of caution with this, and just to assume that every crossing is a major crossing, and some driveways are actually a major crossing too, and adhere to the signage that Mr. Chair, if it's all right to be frank, I mean, I've told you this, like if I'm a bike rider, and I am a bike rider, I pump my brakes, I slow down at these crossings, making out of self-preservation, making sure the coast is clear, and then I cross it without actually stopping, unless there's a vehicle there, then you do stop. But I blow through those stop signs all the time with an eye on the environment that I'm in, out of self-preservation.
right, I think we all do, which is why this just seems so bizarre that we have such a gulf here. Rather than having a stop sign, it should say caution driveway or something, from my perspective. And because I don't like to be blowing through a stop sign, which of course I do all the time on these. And so it seems to me that we would all be better off as a community if we had stop signs on major intersections rather than every dirt road, driveway, and you know. I mean, that's my perspective. And so, you know.
But that would end up with a different definition if you're on like Orange Street, which is a bike route with a bike lane, and are bikes supposed to stop before Marine Home Center and Hatches? Like that, it doesn't make sense in those situations. So why would it make sense on a rural path for a driveway to be different than a driveway in a major road? I think there's something that we could define as a committee, what a crossing point was, or what could come up with our own definition and see if a different committee had a different definition.
Well, I think that's a very good, well, you've made a very good point, Edwin. And I guess since I have to actually step off in a few minutes, RJ, you have your hand up.
No, I'd just be happy to first of all, review the spreadsheets, but second of all, there's every intersection can't be major. How did that decision come to be? Who said that? Where is that codified? Because that does us absolutely no good. Almost every intersection is different, but you definitely have classes of intersection based on the kind of traffic it sees, just like everyone here has been mentioning. But we can't just blanket every intersection as major. Whatever definition they were trying to come up with when they wrote that, that wasn't the intention, and we have to have a conversation about it because I mean there is a difference between just a driveway that has a house and a driveway that's got a development behind it. So if we're gonna get anywhere with this, we have to define what the intersection is and what it needs, which is why I was asking if there was any flexibility in what the state gives us, because I think Michelle has brought up before the idea of raised crossings because the stop sign, you're supposed to stop at the stop sign, but it's optional for everybody. It's more dangerous for a cyclist and for, a raised crossing that a car ignores at its own peril, destroying its suspension. Or even something like what the Noshop neighborhood did with those speed bumps. There's two really terrible speed bumps right before the bike path when you're leaving that neighborhood. And those were voluntary, and it's made that intersection safer. But going back to the before my rant, like I'm happy to look at these, but we also need like an actual definition of a major intersection if we're gonna get anywhere in this conversation. Thanks.
Thanks, RJ. So, all right, I would like to propose that we look at the spreadsheets with photographs, and before our next meeting, we get in touch with Mike to how we rate the intersections on the spreadsheet, whether we would consider them minor and the stop sign should be removed, or whether we consider them that it would be in everybody's interest to keep the stop signs. Would someone like to make a motion to that effect? Do you feel that that would be a good use of our time to discuss this at the next meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Michelle. So by roll call vote, Edwin Claflin.
Aye.
Michelle Kramer.
Aye.
John McTinnan. John.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Joe Topham.
Aye.
RJ Turcott.
Aye.
Laura Walters.
Aye.
Ian Golding, aye. And so, thank you, everybody. Mike, thank you in particular for both your presentation and making it clear how complicated and difficult this subject is. So, and RJ, may I hand over to you, please? And thank you, everybody, and have a great Thanksgiving. So.
Thank you, Ian.
You too,
Thank
Ian.
you. You too.
Thanks. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay. So with that, with Ian stepping off, unless anyone, well, we already made the motion, so I'm just gonna move on to 2B, proposed bylaw amendment for path speed limit and three bike class regulations. Tough word. And I missed the last meeting, Joe. I missed your presentation on this. I don't know if it was you or Mike who wanted to sort of take the lead on this.
Mike, would you want me to? I
This
don't
is
mind.
this is your article, Joe, so I don't want to.
Well, you always push me in front. I knew you were going to do that. All right, thank you. So I had a really good meeting with Town Council Brian Riley, and he's reviewing it. He said there was just some minor little tweaks that he wanted to make. Nothing he felt was out of the ordinary or anything that would be not approved at the state. He thought it was a really good guideline to be set up. The one thing that Ian did bring up earlier that my brother was off riding a couple weekends ago, in Falmouth, and they have this very simple sign, speed limit, how to pass, stuff like that. So that was something that I wanted to, for the next meeting, have in Photoshop, create something, and maybe I could work with Mike, but I figured I could go out and create something for you all to see, and then check in with Mike and make sure it would work. But I think something to make it a little more Nantucket. This was, the typical state sign, kind of green, and it was nicely done, but I think we could kind of, tweak it and adjust it for our needs in Nantucket. And the other thing was, because of that signage, I and Brian Riley have been trying to see if there's any Falmouth guideline bike path. We haven't been able to find anything, which is kind of surprising. The other part of that is I had a sit-down meeting with town manager Libby Gibson, and I said maybe making an informational video, something we can have in the school system, something to be on the boats, etc. So she really liked that, in some way to kind of get out of social media of how this would work on Nantucket. So as people coming to Nantucket, or some way to kind of bring this forward. She really liked that. I've been talking to a production company to see if they'd be interested. So far, yes. They've been working on a couple of edits, and they'll get us an estimate, and we'll kind of work with that. And Mike, I can sidebar with you once I get a little bit further into that. But we're just in the meet and greet phase, but we just figured that would be something really useful to promote the etiquette, bike path, passing, all that other stuff, alerting people. And again, this article, I'm not looking for everyone to get a ticket. That's not my point. But I think if it's on the books, verbal warning at start at first, and if it's someone who's a habitual offender, then I guess there could be a ticket. But I'm not looking for, this to be, everyone stopping at every, e-bike rider. But I do think there is, this being on the books, I think would be very important in Nantucket. And then this would prompt the state to kind of bring this forward. There's other communities I found that are pushing this forward as well. I think they're having the same problems with some e-bikes in the class 3. I just heard someone tell me at an NPDC meeting that he was riding along with Wisconsin driving, and on the bike path was someone going parallel with him at 47 miles an hour down the bike path. And I mean, I know there's no one on there at the time, but still there is that little bit of safety that we need to be aware of. And so we just need to kind of investigate a little bit more. But right now, everything's going forward. And Libby thinks that this should be sponsored by us, the select board and planning board. So that's where we're at. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Any comments, Edwin? I see your hands.
Thank you. Just one slight concern that was brought up to me via someone in the town was the wordage of the passing at 5 miles an hour clause that's in there.
So that I've changed because when I was writing it, I was thinking of walkers, but there's joggers, etc. So we've revised that to slow down at a pace. And once Brian Riley gets the final edits to us,
Okay.
I will share that with everyone. But yeah, that came up, and I've received 55, 60 emails, text messages, and I've replied to everyone. A lot of really, really good suggestions. I would say I had one. I wouldn't call it negative. I would say it was critical, and it was good, and it was well thought out, and it was something to consider. And I feel that this article would be not only for bikers, but for walkers as well. And that was the video as well. The one I saw, and I could share that with Mike, and then we could distribute it. But it was something to talk about bikers and walkers and everyone using the path and working in unison. That's kind of the goal of this whole thing, I think. So
I think it could get very universal support if there aren't things that are confusing to certain people. And so that makes it much, much better and approachable for most people to approve it. Thank you.
Agreed.
Michelle?
I really like it too. I also initially had a question about the 5 mile thing. I think I walk on average 4.5 miles an hour. So it would be difficult to past me. But additionally, I was also wondering, and maybe it's in there, maybe I've not read it, but signage for people to know on what kind of path they are. So on Vesper Lane, for example, or Sparks Avenue, I think it's officially just a pedestrian path, but a lot of bikers use it. Yeah, are we going to discourage people using those paths or encourage, or
I think it's a really good question. Because I see you and your husband walking that every day. That's nice. You pass by my office, so I watch you guys walk by from work. And I would say when I am going to the high school early in the morning, I jump on that sidewalk, if you will. And then if I see a walker, I'll slow down, make sure there's no cars, jump it back in the road and then go back out, because it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning, no light. I have lights on and all that fun stuff, but still, just to be safe, I jump up onto the sidewalk. But I do know and recognize that I would give way to the walker on that path. But that's really something. I don't know how the design came about, and I think it should be extended all the way to Milk Street, but I don't know if that'll ever happen. I have seen a design probably 10 or 12 years ago, but it's weird because it is on that side of the road and then it crosses over. It's kind of wild. But anyway, yeah, I'm not really quite sure how they deal with that. I don't know if Mike wants to weigh in on that, but right now that's the way I use it. And I see most of, like a lot of the school kids do the same thing as they're driving down, and then they jump off and then get back on. So
I just think when it comes to enforcing stuff, it might be difficult to say, well, you're not allowed here, but you are allowed there, and we do allow you on this path, but not I don't know. It becomes a little murky, I guess.
yeah, that roadway is a little gray area to me. I don't think it is quite defined, but like I said, to me it reads more of a sidewalk, but I think for the safety and a lot of the morning, sometimes the sunlight's right in the driver's eyes. So that's why, being a driver, been on the street for 59 years, I kind of understand how that light works, and that, and I just, from my perspective, I'd rather get off and on the sidewalk, it's just for that little bit. But like I said, when there's a walker, I jump off. So.
Just to be clear on that, I do believe you can bike on a sidewalk outside of a settled business district or in some other areas. So I think it's just the out of town, the in-town sidewalks, in around like the Stop and Shop, those sidewalks, any type of commercial, central business district area, riding a bicycle on sidewalks is prohibited.
Oh, good to know. Thank you.
I unfortunately need to go. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving, Rochelle. Okay. Any other committee members? Comments, questions for Joe on this proposal?
I'll keep you guys posted.
Okay.
When it gets through Brian Riley, I'll send it to Mike and he can send it out. Yeah, that's where we're at.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Joe. So with that, we can move on to other business. And so committee comment, I know we just missed Michelle. Mike, do you want to sort of give us the update he was going to give, or at least what you can?
I'll just have to say we do have like one last item on the action discussion, the 62 and 64 Sankaty Road and Art Gasparo. Was going to just update the committee on progress of the design. You might remember from our last meeting, we did review the how the bike path or a potential driveway was going to interact with the bike path, and I think Art was going to kind of walk you through some adjustments he made to the design.
Okay, yeah, yep. I don't have that on my agenda, but absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the agenda may have been updated, but I provided a revised plan. I submitted it to the chair. I'm not sure if it was distributed to the entire commission, but no, I was going to offer to share it, but Mr. Burns has done that. So what we have done is, we had the discussion at your last meeting regarding this, and then we had a planning board meeting last Thursday where we had a bit further discussion and received some additional input. So I further revised the plan to what is before you that I'd like to just kind of run through, and I know it's getting late, so I'll be as brief as possible. The subdivision, right now, there's 2 lots that exist, and there's one existing driveway that serves number 64. So in theory, we could have or the owner could create one more driveway to serve number 62. What we're proposing is out of the 2 lots to create 3 lots. And the owner has agreed to restrict one of those 2 new lots against access to Sankaty Road. So we're combining the driveways from what would be 2 lots to 1 lot. I would like to keep the existing driveway that serves number 64 and then have a single driveway that serves 62A and B, if you will. I don't know what they'll be called. And that's what's shown in the magenta color on the screen. We've pushed that driveway all the way to the south end of the property. We believe that's going to be the safest location. And what it does there is to completely remove any crossing of the bike path with the driveway. And we've also proposed, we've heard the comments, and I'm aware of the situation of sort of I guess I would call it undefinedness of the existing terminal end of the south, that south end of the bike path. So we've proposed to narrow that up, add a little bit of pavement on the west side to create more of a right angle to discourage what I describe as sort of the on-ramp effect from the bike path into the road. We've proposed a split rail fence that would go across sort of where that bike path would end now. We would remove some of that existing asphalt and replant it with grass so that you had a grass area between the end of the bike path and the new driveway. We've proposed that throughout the bike path easement across the frontage of these 2 properties, the owner would agree to maintain that vegetation to a height that doesn't exceed 3 feet. I believe that'll improve the sight distances for both drivers and bicyclists, pedestrians in that area. And then we've proposed to relocate the crosswalk to the north to align with the revised terminal end of the bike path. Essentially, we're moving it up to close to the utility pole that's there. The signs would be adjusted. There's a bench that could get moved up into that grass area. With that, I think that all of these things combined really help to both improve the safety of that spot in the area, as well as to allow for this driveway access into these 2 new into the 1 new lot, but essentially the combined lots. And we've also proposed a couple of additional signage for bike path ends, just to again alert bicyclists that are southbound of the situation. So with that, I would be happy to try to address any questions or concerns should you have them. And ultimately, we would appreciate, if possible, support of this committee to bring back to the planning board. We're coming back. We continued the planning board hearing with a commitment to further work on this. And that's what's before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Art. Do any members of the committee have questions or comments about this before I move on to the public?
RG, I'll just ask that perhaps if this culminates into maybe providing just the feedback and comments from the committee, any type of recommendation, because you all report to the NPDC, that would be the how we would funnel the communication of the recommendation, and I just assume avoid that. So if you could just make comments and see if there's consensus of just general feeling on some of these issues, I think that I can put that as in the minutes, but it would kind of keep me from having to get the planning commission to accept that. And Joe, I hope that maybe that you agree.
Yes. And the other thing I just want to say, I don't want to make any comments at this point. I would like to get your guys' feedback. I don't want to lead you. I want your own, take on it, comments, thoughts, suggestions, and then that's why I'm not going to speak on this until the end if I do.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, could I add one
Yep.
thing? I just wanted, part of the presentation, I wanted to add, Mr. Burns had suggested at the planning board hearing, and I've incorporated also into the plan, a proposed detectable surface warning panel that would also be added. So I just wanted to, I meant to mention that. Thank you.
Okay. Amy Eldridge from the public, if you'd like to comment, go ahead. I see you have your hand raised, but if you're talking right now, you're muted. I can't tell.
I'm going to text her.
Yeah, maybe. She's had her hand raised for a while. In any case, if other committee members don't have comment, I'll say that I remember going to planning board for this one and bringing it up to that board, and I think it's light years better now than it was as originally proposed. I think this is really great, and I'm happy to support this as it's proposed here.
Hi, can you guys
There
hear
you
me? I
go.
was muted.
Yes, hi Amy.
Hi, so I am a direct abutter to 62 Sankaty Road, and I know that Art and I have had some good conversations. My concern is here when you look back at this map, really the neighbors, and it's very clear at planning board meetings, the last two, that we would really appreciate the driveway at 64 to be used. I know I talked to Art after planning board, and we've kind of come up with a slightly better idea of the exit at the mouth of the bike path. But to me, that's going to be like the worst case scenario, because it's either going to be this or that. And I'd prefer that it not be what we're looking at, because I know when I come to my driveway, which is just a few feet before where this intended driveway is, that when I put my blinker on, people coming off the bike path get kind of a little freaked that, and even going onto the bike path, get a little freaked that I might be actually turning onto the bike path. And now, even with delineation of a driveway and the hard 90-degree turn here, I still feel like when the leaders, property owners come in, or whoever's going to be owning these properties come in, it's really going to look like people are turning into the mouth of the bike path. And I think that that is a scary thought. I don't really care what they're going to do with the property, but my concern is the public safety hazard that is at that intersection. And I know that it's not the landowner's issue. It was really poor planning when that bike path went in 5 years ago, because it wasn't overly populated as it is now, and people weren't doing the kind of things that people are doing now with their property, subdividing and building. But my concern is that that's just a cluster for a disaster. And it's not a matter of if something's going to happen, it's when something's going to happen. My husband is a first responder, and he was on scene for the bike accident down by the conservation exit at Suck Hollow Road. And it's a matter of when and not if it's going to happen. And I think that at the end of the day, the neighbors are only asking that the driveway not be right there for that instant. My only other suggestion would be, and I know that I talked to Art afterwards, and they would put maybe a split rail fence at the end of the hard angle to make sure that bikers coming off the path make that turn. But I just think there's a lot of stuff to be thinking about as a biker. And we met with the property owners about probably 4 or 5 weeks ago. And as we were standing in the roadway, kind of looking at things and kind of mapping out stuff, we watched 2 prominent islanders who are very clear know where this bike path ends, right out into Sankaty Road. And it's just going to be very scary. I feel like I'm fighting a a battle that we're never going to win. But the neighbors just really would love to see not the extra cut into the bike path. If this had been anywhere else, it's probably not that big of a deal. But you're talking about the mouth and the exit, and I feel like even thinking about the conversation from the last meeting, that 90-degree turn still creates confusion for people coming on and off and cars coming in and out. And I feel very terrible. But that's just not an ideal place to have a driveway cut where people are pretty familiar with how that has exited out for 25 years, to then make those radical changes and still have people be feared that people are turning onto the bike path. I think it's going to create more issues than we solve, and I don't want to be back at the planning board going, or to BPAC going, I kind of told you so, or I want you guys to think about this. I want clarity on that this is just a nightmare right here. And I get that they're going to clean up the sight lines, but Mr. Leaders had the property since July of 2022, and there's no cutting of these bushes. They're overhanging the bike path. I mean, even if they cleared that up, I think it would make it a little bit easier, but I still think that it's going to be tricky merging a driveway and a hard turn there. That's just my opinion, and I greatly appreciate you guys listening to me yet again ramble on about the same stuff.
Thank you, Amy. Want to go Joe, then Laura?
Amy, I just sent you an image. I don't know if you've seen it before. You can see it where you're on your phone.
Yeah, I have. I kind of have that.
Okay. All right. I just want to check.
Yeah, and we talked after the meeting about, what are some things that could help. And, this would be kind of like my given, but I really feel like this cut at that corner, even with these changes, it's still going to be a logistical nightmare for people coming in and out of that driveway. It's hard for me, and I have a little bit of a buffer. These people aren't going to have any buffer at all, whoever it is. And I just think that I'd prefer not to be witness to an accident and an ambulance out at that thing going, I knew this was going to happen. I knew this was going to happen. And I think that I'd rather us take serious precautions to prevent this. If this property was even, 2 lots down, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be freaking out. But my husband is a retired firefighter EMS for 31 years for this town. We've seen and heard and read some things. And this is going to be a disaster waiting to happen. And I really think that all this finagling is making this a little more complicated. The more I look at it, the more I'm even more scared than when I spoke at planning board meeting on Thursday and when I initially spoke, because I think there's going to be a lot of confusion. You look at that driveway, as you pass my driveway and you turn your turn signal on to make a left-hand turn into that 12-foot wide driveway. Can you imagine what bikers are thinking? And there's going to be no vegetation to shut that down or to block that. So people are going to just see it and they're not going to realize.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Laura, would you like to comment?
Yeah, so I'm looking on my phone at the map, and it's even uglier in real life than looking at this rendering. So Amy, since you you live there, you know better than anyone what happens there. The way I'm looking at this is, does the driveway have to be there? It looks like that other house is up. I don't know if that's at the top, the other, you can just see like a
so 64, I guess Art could actually answer this, but 64 had a driveway that we were in hopes once sewer goes by that they would utilize that and there would be no additional cut into the bike path. And that's what we really want. That's what the neighborhood wants. And I'm sorry that Rob and Carol Benchley can't be here and that my father-in-law is not tech savvy and can't be here either. And my daughter, unfortunately, is holding down the fort where I work. So, we've got 4 or 5 people who live right there that live this every day, 365, 24/7. And, like I said in the previous thing, I'm watching locals, smart individuals just ride right off in the middle of winter. And I think it would behoove us to have a traffic study in the middle of July at that spot, because I think that you guys would be shocked at stuff that would come out of that report. I mean, you have gaggles of children and families on bikes that cluster there looking at their phones and their maps, trying to figure out where the shuttle bus stop is, how to get to Sankaty Lighthouse, and how to get down to the market for ice cream. It's just a disaster. And then you add cars coming in and out of my driveway and this driveway that is precariously being located at the mouth of an exit that's been, there for 25 plus years. I've lived on Sankaty Road since 1999, and we used the bike path before it was really like open for my daughter. But I can tell you that it's gotten busier and busier over the years, and it's just going to be an issue. And I think cars turning left into that driveway, it's going to spread fear with people with young children that are kind of weebly wobbly on bikes.
Okay, Laura.
Yeah, so I guess what I was wondering, is there anything that you would propose that would work? And it sounds like you're saying if they shared that driveway.
Yes, that would be the most ideal plan.
And what was the pushback on that? Is it from that homeowner or?
It's that I think they're going to have to finagle some more stuff on the property. But my understanding is that whether or not the leaders or the town approved sewer for that full entire road, which kind of opens them up to be able to do this rear lot subdivision. With that being said, that once sewer goes past, obviously we all know you're going to get forced onto the sewer, which is what they want, because the subdivision doesn't really work without the sewer. So they would have to abandon their sewer tank and fill it with sand, and it would be able to be driven over. So we were wondering if there was a way that they could finagle a driveway, once they come in 64, if they could reconfigure how people were getting to those new lots. And that's, I think, what we don't see here is that we're not seeing the full map to get a full understanding. We're seeing, what they want to change. But I think if people could see where the dwellings were, you have a better understanding. And I'm not about to tell them what they can and can't do with their property. This scares the hell out of me. I mean, I lose sleep at night thinking about if this gets approved this way. I can't even tell you.
Okay. Laura, does that satisfy your questions?
Yeah, I think it's a hard one.
Okay, Edwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just questions as well. So is 62 on Eldridge
No.
Lane, or there's a buffer in between? Okay, so it can't exit onto Eldridge Lane.
No, there's my understanding is that there's deed restrictions to that were put in when that went in. So, and that's not an option on the table for our family.
Okay, and then and the zoning, that this is the last lot in SR 20 before on the other side of Eldridge Lane, it's SR 10.
I believe so.
Okay, so, and is that along Sankaty Road there? That is where the speed limit drops into
25.
the historic district right at that point as well?
No, it's a little farther back. It actually, as you round the corner at the Gulf, and you go about a half a mile down the road. So I would say it's probably maybe 3 or 4 driveways from my house, I believe.
And I'm just trying to think back to my youth. If like the well pump little hut thing that's in the middle of going farther down to Wisconsin, that's sort of where it was before, where everything would slow down, and now things have expanded and started to slowing down farther back.
Well, no, I think what happened was that 20 is plenty in Wisconsin was not an actual legitimate enforceable speed limit.
Sticker, yeah.
Right. So when Chief Pittman was here, they've looked into it and found that the lowest the speed can be, if it's not in a school zone, would be 25 miles an hour for thickly settled. So about 4 or 5 years ago, those signs popped up as you enter and exit large portions of the island, the airport, our, Sconset. You'll see it as you come off the boat.
Yeah, no, I just
But-
remember as a kid taking Pulpus bike path out there and then getting kicked out onto the road, but
Yeah.
there was no one out there.
Right, and also the other added problem we're gonna see is that within the last 6 weeks, Sankaty Road's been repaved, and it is like a straightaway, and there's a lot of speeding on the road. I know that the police department is very, understaffed for the size of the island population that we're dealing with, and they can't be everywhere at all times. But Sankaty Road is a speed zone like crazy now that we've got fresh black asphalt.
And then just a question to Dave, as the bike path ends there and puts everyone on the road, is there a designated bike lane established after that, or is it just you're on a road?
Mr. Chairman, was that to me? It's just the road.
It's just the road. Okay. Yeah. I got nothing but more questions going on in my head. Sorry for confusing things more.
All right, raise your hand.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to try to address, some of these questions. I think that what we're trying to do is work with a situation where the bike path essentially, this is where it just ended. And I don't know that a lot of thought was given to that terminal end and how wide that pavement is. And it just comes out into the road. These lots, there are already 2 lots there now. And so if we were to just do another, apply for a driveway, it would very likely, be approved without a planning board process. So we're really not, and it would cross the bike path. I see this as an improvement because we are actually putting this to the south and not having any bicycle path crossing. And if you were to then try to use that existing driveway for all of the lots, you're essentially just going to have that many more vehicles that are crossing the bike path as well. And it's a little bit of a trade-off, and kind of going back to your previous discussion with the stop signs and the crossings. So I think that when, that the process between BPAC and the planning board and the neighbors' comments have all helped really to develop what is, I think, an improved plan. I mean, certainly, a sharing of Eldridge Lane and then on, which I'm not proposing, but to come up and try to only have that, would eliminate that in its entirety, but that's not, what we're talking about. And there is separation distance there. And I also would just say that, this is going to serve, 2 lots, and not have, again, 3 crossings. So I think there's a lot of give and benefit that has happened from this process and this plan. It's never going to, no matter what we do here, you're never going to stop the folks that are on vacation that are looking at their phone and coming out from a bike path to a road. There's still a function of that is this situation of as it exists here, and the use is still going to exist. And I think that this actually improves it, and that I don't see an adverse effect from having a driveway to the south. And I think it is in fact better than, having the driveway that would cross the bike path. So perhaps, there's some disagreement and I'll have to agree, but I just wanted to, give the committee the, a perspective of how this has been looked at.
Thank you, Art. Do we have any more committee comments? So as I said earlier, I mean, this is not a good intersection. I agree with what a lot of Amy has had to say. But we are going to be talking about this intersection again when the sewer does come through, with some of the stuff going on in Sconset. So I think we'll be able to take a look at this further. But as of right now, compared to how this looked initially at planning board when I commented, I think this is much improved for what it is. I mean, again, it's not a good intersection, but I mean, eliminating the crossing and having it turn onto the road and changing some of the surfaces to alert people, I think is all an improvement on a difficult intersection. Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the one thing that really has been working well in the town of Nantucket is a 10-foot Belgian apron. It defines that is a driveway. It's not I don't think anyone's been confused that would be, confused with a bike path. And I don't know if that's something to kind of help Amy. You're saying that someone may be confused of going to the driveway, but they may think it's a bike path and vice versa. And I wonder if that's an option, Art, to kind of do that. I mean, I know Elders Lane is, 40-foot wide strip, and it looks like a roadway, and it's not, as a planning board member now, that we would want. We want something that's, 20-foot, narrower, smaller, and not as industrial looking. So I wonder if that would be an option, just that little bit of area, just to satisfy the view that it is a driveway, and that would delineate differently from the new access onto the bike path. But I feel like this 90-degree is going to be extremely successful, because now bikers are going to be, perpendicular to the road and looking down and up and down Sankaty Road and seeing cars, and can we cross? I think we already have a bad situation, but I think we're making it much better than what we have. And I honestly, even if you put the driveway and all three properties came out that one at the top, I still think you're going to have the same problem. This eliminates anyone crossing our bike path. Going back to our earlier discussion and stop signs and watching out for people leave, I think this would be safer to bikers in some ways. So I think that's my opinion, but that's kind of where I come from. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So if the committee doesn't have any further comments, would someone like to make a motion to either support or not this proposal to planning board?
Mr. Chair, if it's all right, just because of the action, I'm not sure you'd be making that recommendation to the NPDC. I would just ask that maybe the comments can be provided to Art, and if Art's satisfied with the comments we received from the VPAC, and you let that be the end of the discussion, or I'm not sure a formal action be required.
Okay, yeah, if that makes more sense, then we can.
Art, does that help you out? And Joe, does that seem good as far as planning board?
Yeah, I think that would satisfy. Yep.
I could, if I may, Mr. Chair, I would just present to the planning board that, we've reviewed it with BPAC. I think that, I'm not hearing any, well, I guess I want to be very careful, how I think that, I could present that I presented it to you, but, and I don't know that there's really an approval, but I guess, I would present it as no outstanding concerns if that was, seemed amenable to you.
Mr. Chair, I'd go a step further and just echo a lot of what you said, that this was a much improved plan from what was presented at the last meeting. You kind of like the perpendicular approach to the roadway, and the signage that's been added, and the detectable warning panels, and other treatments that have been done to kind of reduce the conflicts and make it clear for everyone.
Okay, that makes sense.
If everyone else supports that, I think that was general agreement that those were good additions.
Thank you.
Okay. So we don't need to make a formal motion on that. So with that, if there aren't any further comments, moving on to other business and now committee comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michelle had to leave early, but I wanted to just let you all know that Mass DOT did provide a grant opportunity for bike racks. And I shared that with Michelle, so he's going to incorporate that into the school facilities. He's also coordinating with our DPW on some other improvements, and you all may have seen the very well, it'd be hard not to miss the improvements to Surfside Road by the middle school and high school, and how we're widening out the Surfside Road bike path with approval of the school and with full support of the school to relocate the crosswalk for the high school to a mid-block between the two driveways. So we're excited that's actually happening because that's taken about 10 years to get done.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Mike. Are there any other committee members' comments? Any at all? Nothing? All right, public comment for things that aren't on the agenda. I think we lost our last member of the public. All right, with that, if there are no further comments, a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair.
Does Joe have a second?
Yep.
All right, seconded by John. Okay, so by roll call vote, Laura,
Aye.
Edwin,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
John.
Aye.
All right, so motion to adjourn, roll call vote unanimous. Thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks.
See you all.